one of the things that has helped me in this thing of forgiveness and trying to understand it is to look at the word, the Greek word that's translated to forgive, the verb to forgive, or the nouns that come out of that. And it just, it basically just means release, to cancel a debt, to drop it. It would be like someone publishing a book and there's an error, that you just drop it from the text. You delete it. Well, there is a measure of that just really is, so much of it is a choice. Lord, I just choose to release this one who has offended me or who has hurt me, to release this one unto you. I've found more comfort at that point, just instead of trying to fight the battle myself or trying to continue to carry it, that, Lord, I take the one who had abused, the one who had lied, the one who had stolen, and just by faith, as you give me strength by your Spirit, I give them to you. I release them unto you, that I no longer have the responsibility to pay back the debt that they owe, that I feel like they owe me. I release them
and sometimes
unto
the Lord gives you the opportunity, not always, but I'm sure y'all have seen this, where when you have that attitude that you have been forgiven and you are forgiving, that sometimes you're clean out toward them, so now you have the opportunity to be that light to Jesus. And sometimes they come to him, sometimes they don't.
But every time the grieving or the reminder of the wounding comes up, I need to release all over again. It's.
This was one of the questions that the staff asked me as we went through this study. Said, what about, though, if you do that and then they turn around and do it again?
Yeah.
Or turn around and do it again.
Right.
And then that's exactly the scripture I mentioned there. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, 7 is a perfect number. It's a complete number. And God's grace is complete and God's grace is perfect. Mm-hmm. And so it gives us, in ourselves, we don't have the ability. Yeah. But by his grace, and it's that grace that we pull up from by faith, and we're able to forgive those people who have hurt us. And
I'm one of those people
I'm like, well, I'd forgive them if they just asked me to forgive them. Yeah. I'm just kind of like waiting for them to come and say, I'm sorry for what I did. And something that was really liberating to me is when Jesus was hanging on the cross, his last words in the Greek was tetelestai, which means, it's the merchant term, that the debt is paid. And so there's many times when I think waiting for someone to acknowledge that they have offended me or hurt me, whatever, is to realize Jesus, not only did he die for my sins, but he died for their sins against me. And to be able to look at him and say, Lord, you paid the debt, they owe me. Because it's so true that we really are giving ourselves a gift when we forgive other people. Because as long as we hold on to the things that they've done against us, it's affecting us. And I can say that here, but there have been seasons in my life where I just couldn't forgive, and it ate me up with bitterness. And it doesn't just tint one area of your life; it tints your relationship with other people. You want to be free to love, but you can't love them because you're so connected to the one you've not forgiven.
And what about too, Shirley? Like maybe I've been offended, but they don't even know that they offended me.
Right.
I mean,
a lot of times that's the case.
I can tell them,
let me say, I don't think you need to say, I forgive you to them. You just in your heart.
Yeah. How do you know when, say, if you feel like you've been offended, what are some of the guidelines that help to say, I just need to ask forgiveness for the Lord for my attitude, or I need to ask the Lord, but then I need to go to them and ask them to forgive me? I mean, where do you draw the line? How do you?
Well, let me tell you, and y'all can tell me whether I did it wrong or not. Recently, hopefully, but recently I was involved in a situation where I felt like I had been wrong. And I think in every way, legally, morally, ethically, I needed to confront what the wrong was. I don't think having forgiveness doesn't mean that we don't deal with the issues that are there. And I needed to confront. So I did. And the response I got back just overwhelmed me. I mean, it was, I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Negatively against
yes,
you. Yeah.
negatively, and excuses and turning the whole thing around and so forth. And at that point, I said, what do I do? And the Lord just told me, be quiet. Just shut up. Don't do anything. Wait a little while. And I think one of the things we do is we respond quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And when you respond quickly, it's bad. So I just waited until I felt it was time, because the issue still was there and had to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
The issues are surrounding the wrong. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to be quiet, and then I'm going to deal with the issue later. So then I sent out an olive branch and said, hey, let's talk about this. Our emotions are calmed down now. Let's talk about this. And then so we did. And when we did talk about it, I got the same thing. And the Lord again just said, be quiet. We'll deal with this. You just be quiet. And that was in somewhat of a sense where there was more than just emotions. There were actual things that needed to be righted.
Yeah.
So
and that's, I think that is an important part. To forgive someone does not necessarily mean that there is a complete overlooking of whatever wrongs were done. I know in talking with folks who have had, and sometimes it's men who have been abused by as a boy, abused, and this sexual abuse thing is so huge. The wrongs that are being done to business people in the marketplace, where they've just been lied to, they've been cheated against, their job standing has been undercut simply because of age, or because an overturning a buyout of a company, and so they bring all of those kinds of things are because it's your life. Who you are is so tied to what you do professionally or your physical being. We're tied. So this matter of forgiveness, Sammy, is a huge issue in real Christian living. I mean, we can all develop a Pollyanna kind of life. So, well, if you're just living in the Spirit, you never have to deal with these kind of things. Well, you do.
Probably more so, because the enemy's trying so hard to get that wedge in between you and the Father.
And between others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it does not mean that if someone has physically abused you, that you're supposed to just all of a sudden develop this warm, fuzzy feeling toward the person who did that to you, or the one who lied against you and it cost you dearly. That forgiveness automatically means, well, I'm okay with that. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Sin is sin. God said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. And so much of this forgiveness part is releasing the vengeance aspect of it into the Lord's hands. But I think it's just real important to clarify for folks who are listening, because some will be listening in places where Christianity is costing them dearly.
Yes.
It does not mean that all of a sudden you're just feeling these warm feelings of what they did to my family or did to my own possessions. That's no big deal. The Lord can certainly bring the peace to our hearts, but sin is sin, and sin is ultimately against God. God is the judge of all of that. He will handle it. That's not our responsibility. That's not our territory to have to defend. And so when we say we forgive or we release, we really are releasing the perpetrators and what they did back into the hands of the Lord. And amazingly, He's able to, once we do that, there's able to be a peace that comes.
And I think what happens, and especially in praying for your family, I think psychologically and spiritually what happens is we have substituted forgiveness for suppression or ignoring.
Amen.
If we just suppress it and get it deeper down in there, then we don't ever really deal with it in our hearts, and recognize, hey, this is wrong. And so what we need to do is deal with it and then apply the forgiveness. Or we ignore it. We just kind of act like it didn't happen. And we haven't resolved anything.
That's right.
For our hearts. And this is the thing that for the book thing that I was most of those hurts come through our families.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a hard time praying for a family member that you've got something deep down suppressed, or you've just turned your head and ignored something. So you want to be able to pray with power. for that family member.